Hey guys, wanted to talk about flow in this video. Gonna do a few things in this video. One, I'm gonna talk a little bit about my setup and the proper flow to keep corals healthy. And I'm also gonna talk about a simple way to evaluate whether you have good flow in your tank or not. So in this video, you're gonna see several different things. You're gonna see most of the flow around LPS corals. Obviously I'm starting out with my torches here. You're also going to see hammers and frog spawns moving around in the flow. You'll see at times they are barely moving, and at other times they're thrashing around like crazy. And that's just because of the way I have my flow set up. I'm trying to show the same coral under multiple different flows. So you'll see the same coral moving around differently. So a few things about flow. One, it is for health, and I recommend that your flow is random and variable. You can achieve random and variable flow a couple different ways. One, you can have a smart powerhead. That's what I'm using on this 45. I have a Nero 3, and I program it to be between 25 and 75%, 25 minimum, 75% maximum, with a medium of 50% of its power. I also add a stationary powerhead in addition to that, in order to bounce off the top of the tank and create that surface movement. So that is one way to create variable speed. That's with a speed controlled powerhead. The other way to create variable flow is through the use of cycling your powerheads on and off. So for instance, my 56 gallon, I have 3 powerheads in there. One on the left side, one on the right side, and they both shoot at the surface of the tank, and then they bounce off the surface of the tank and hit the front of the glass and collide. And then I have one that shoots across the back behind the rockwork to keep good flow behind the rockwork. That way we don't have any dead spots. Those run constant for 2 hours, all 3 powerheads on. And then for the next hour, one of them shuts off for 15 minutes, comes back on. The next one shuts off for 15 minutes, comes back on. The next one shuts off for 15 minutes. And then they all shut off for 15 minutes. And the only flow moving at that time is my filtration flow. So it gets a very randomized flow throughout the day. There's a 3-hour pattern, which is of course divisible into the 24-hour day. So I have a set pattern that runs throughout the day, but delivers the corals very random and variable flow. And of course I have multiple setups. When I had my 75, it was 3 powerheads in a similar setup to the 56. My 150 was 4 powerheads, 2 on each side, about one on each end, and then one about 30% in from each side, angling in and creating that total flow throughout the system. Also to keep in mind, I recommend that you run a medium flow on average. And of course the flow would range between medium low and medium high. If you do that, you're gonna be able to have a good mixed reef with pretty much any type of coral that you want. Running a tank with very low flow or very high flow, of course, limits what you can put in the tank, and we don't want to do that. So targeting a good medium as a standard with a variance between medium high and medium low will allow you to have pretty much any coral you want in the tank. Also, you need to avoid direct flow on any of your corals. If you have direct flow on a coral, even an SPS high demand coral, you're going to kill it. You're going to strip the skin from the coral. On LPS, you can force polyp bailout. You're going to have tons of problems. Do not put your powerhead directly onto your corals. Bounce it off a surface and create total water movement. Create that wave. Do not just blast a coral with flow. You will kill it, and you will lose everything that you put into your tank. Make sure you bounce it off surfaces and create total tank movement, not just a direct flow onto a coral. And in doing that, you will also have the benefit of creating surface movement. So when you bounce it off the surface of your tank, the water surface of your tank, and then bounce it, say, towards the front of the glass, that's typically what I do on my stationary powerheads. I bounce off the surface of the water, bounce towards the front of the glass. It hits two surfaces before it hits any type of coral, and you're going to create that surface water movement that's going to reduce skim buildup and aid in gas exchange. Also, don't forget about flow to support heating. If your heater's in your sump, that's kind of null and void. If your heater's in your display because you're running a canister like me, do not forget about having flow around that heater. I personally have my heater by my intake to my canister filter, so it gets plenty of flow moved around it. Also, don't forget about flow behind your rockwork. You do not want any dead spots. Dead spots are bad. They build detritus, and then of course if that dead spot gets interrupted, it's going to put all that into your tank water, which can kill stuff. No dead spots within your tank. You got to make sure it is a total tank flow. So make sure that when you're looking at your tank, you're evaluating for all those different aspects and keeping your tank fully moving from the top all the way down to the bottom. So how do you effectively assess flow? So when you're looking at assessing flow in your tank, there's two very simple ways to do it. The first is when you feed your tank, where does the food go? When you put the food in your tank, does it circle at the top or does it go directly to the bottom? Does it go behind the rockwork and disappear, or does it continually circle? As you can see here in my tank, when I put the food in, it continually circles at the top of the tank. Gives the fish plenty of time to eat it. It doesn't fall to the bottom and just become waste. The fish are able to pick it off. It helps me feed minimal amounts, just enough to keep the fish going, as well as it helps me ensure that I don't have excess food just laying at the bottom of the tank. Of course, I have a cleanup crew, but that's not really their job. Their job is to clean up, not to eat excess food. So I'm just showing these little bits floating here after I just fed. This is about 4 or 5 minutes after I fed. They still haven't hit the bottom of the tank. They're just floating around. And as you can see, while they just float around at the top, the fish are done. They land on corals, and corals consume them. They do not fall to the bottom of the tank and be left for the cleanup crew. My food, when I feed the tank, cycles the top of the tank. It circles around. If it gets below the rockwork, top of the rockwork level and cycles down there, it does not go straight to the bottom. It bounces around because I have all that random flow in the tank moving it. The second way to check your flow is just watch your corals. That's why I've been showing so many corals in the background. If you notice, my corals are bouncing around in a random pattern. They're not, my torches were not blown over, laying on the side, pushed all one way, long tentacles extended out one way. They were not receiving that high one directional flow that was just forcing them to go flat. They were bouncing around everywhere. And that's what you want. You do not want one directional flow on it. You do not want them to lay out flat. You do not want to force the polyps to go only one direction. You do not want so much flow on those polyps that they're laying out flat. If you get too much flow on it, you're going to end up with one directional flow. They're going to lay out flat. You're going to force the coral to grow in that direction. That, of course, is not what you want in your display tank. You want a coral that grows in a bunch of natural directions, not forced to grow in a single direction. The other item you could run into is if you put too much flow on a coral, you could make it not fully open. That's going to take a good amount of flow, but if you have a coral that you have so much flow on it that it's not fully opening, either A, you have it in the wrong spot, or B, you have too much total flow in your tank. Not allowing it to open is going to be bad. Again, one of the huge benefits of flow is to bring food to the coral and take waste away from the coral. If you're damaging the coral on the flow, you're eliminating the possibility for that benefit. You want to bring food to the coral naturally, and you want to remove waste from the coral naturally. Do not force that coral to bend in any particular way. You just want it to bounce around in a bunch of random flow. In the ocean, natural habitat, it's not forced one way. Waves go in and out. Tides move in different directions, curve around rocks. They receive random flow. That's what you're going to need to create in your reef tank to support it. So if this information helped you, you enjoyed it, give me a like, give me a subscribe, and check out my other videos. I'll get more content out soon. Thanks, guys.